Welcome to Road to Redline, the #1 Porsche and Car podcast celebrating the people and the stories behind the world's finest sports cars. Road to Redline is presented by YouTuber and magazine editor Lee Sibley, serial owner and columnist Joe Williams, and 993 owner Andy Brookes. Three enthusiasts on a mission to open doors and bring you the best stories, secrets, and exclusives from the world of Porsche.
Good evening, gents.
Good evening. So tonight we are going out to the world as the #1 Porsche podcast. Because guys, we've been called out, haven't we?
#1 in 11 countries, may I add.
11 countries?
11.
Only 11 though?
Yeah, well, lots of number 2s.
Stick that in your frunk.
Boys, it's good to see you again this week, albeit virtually again.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
We got some cracking backgrounds this week, haven't we?
Yeah, I've just seen Lee's beach scene with a shitting dog on it. Very nice. Very professional.
I see you're sporting the, how can I put this nicely? The handlebar moustache, should we call it, Andy?
Yes, I'm going for the bonjour look tonight.
Ooh,
or is it the kiddie fiddler? I'm not sure.
We've already said, schools aren't open to the 8th of March, so they're safe at the moment.
Yeah. And Joe's got a very posh Road to Redline background that makes him look like he's in a dodgy nightclub.
Professional, have you know? Professional.
Professional. All right, good. So what we're going to discuss tonight then, we're going to do some more questions. We had a load of questions left from our Q&A earlier in the series.
Indeed.
Yeah. Lee's going to tell us all about the new GT3, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, not so much. Well, yeah, a little bit about the GT3. People would have learned all about it on my video, though.
Yes, indeed.
But no, there's a couple of bits. So I was on a few journalists on a virtual roundtable a couple of days before the launch with Andreas, Preuninger and Dr. Frank-Steffen Walliser, the head of the 911 production line these days.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of nice little snippets from that conversation, which I thought would be good value to kind of share and maybe discuss a little bit, particularly in reference to fueling. Which is a lot more interesting than it sounds. So yes, we'll come on to that whenever you're ready.
Okay, what should we hit first then?
Top down. Well, what's the next question that came in, surely?
Let's go for it. Okay, we've got a question from GT Cork, who I believe is in Ireland, hence Cork. And his question is, he's got a 924 that he's currently repainting in lizard green. He's asking, when it comes to older cars, do you think it's worth throwing money at these cars, or when do you stop? He's just about to do an interior renovation and is asking, how deep should he go?
I'll jump in my 2 pence on that one, I reckon. So, I mean, well, from my perspective anyway, I think if you're at the bottom already, then they've only got one way to go. And I think if it's a car you're going to keep, look after and love, then, I would chuck your all into it and just drive it and enjoy it. I think that's the key one there. But it depends what your motivation is for doing it. I think if you're worried about the value of it, well, it only turns into a value if you're actually going to sell it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly that, Joe. I completely agree. It all relates to what you want out of your car and your experience. If you'd rather kind of trade up and go up the food chain, then then do it. Just off personal experience, a few people have said to me now, why are you chucking so much money into your 996, when you could go out and get a 997 or something. But I just think, well, I quite like my project because it's personal to me, isn't it? And it's become a very different car. If I was to just jump into something higher up, for example, a 997, it would just kind of be the same as every other 997. So there's kind of two ways to look at it there, isn't there?
I think one way that I've sort of taken it, I used to sort of attack a car and it almost ended up in like a proper nut and bolt rebuild. And I've taken a bit of a different tack lately into making sure that when you start a project, you define what that project is and don't go into doing project creep. So if you're going to do the interior, make up your mind what you're going to do, and then don't take the interior out, and then think, oh, while I'm here, why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? Because you just end up taking the car to 1,000 bits and it never going back together again.
Right. You open a can of worms, don't you? You just never know. Yeah, you never stop, and then then you get a headache with it, and you end up just getting rid of it or not finishing it. So I agree with that, definitely.
Yeah,
it does raise quite an interesting point in terms of like the wider picture there, because ultimately, if you're thinking fiscally and trying to be fiscally prudent, then you'd only ever restore a car relative to its value anyway. And kind of relating to that, there were a few cars, say, I don't know, even to this day, they're still advertised as, restored fairly recently, but that might have been in 2000 and, well, say it's 10 years ago, 2011. 3.2 Carreras, 964s, 2.7 RSs even, they're all worth far less than what they are now. So they wouldn't have had big money spent on a restoration. So I think when you're shopping for a car and it's advertised as, fairly recently restored, I think you do have to kind of look at when that was and especially in context of the values.
Yeah, I think also you'll keep in mind that, restoring a same age 924 versus any other of a similar era 911 is going to cost you the same money, just because it's a cheaper car to start with. It's not necessarily cheaper to restore or look after it. So it's an investment, isn't it? I think you've got to be in it for the long term, and certainly don't do it with an expectation to see any money back out of it. Yeah,
definitely in it for the love, without a doubt.
We're all in it for the love. Right, next question. Quite like this question actually. Mr. Tin DV, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. 927S or a 981 GTS?
Oh, what? Sorry.
This question. 997S or a 981 GTS? What should he go for?
Again,
it's individual personal opinion, I think.
Yeah, exactly that. It's completely down to the individual. I know that's really kind of sitting on the fence.
Yeah, it is. Let's say it was us. Let's say it was you've got to make the decision between those. Why would you go for one over the other? Maybe that's more helpful.
Okay, fair enough. In that case, I would go for the 997. Surprise, surprise. There's more room for my dog as well as my dear wife in a 997 over a 981 GTS. Although the prospect of a drop top Porsche is pretty appealing, isn't it? But I just feel like the 997S is a little bit more of it's a sensible option.
I think I'll be the opposite there. I'd be 981 GTS all day long. I think that's you're in a much newer car. You're a whole generation on. In terms of interior, in terms of styling, and I think it's a much nicer place to be than a 997. And I think you couple that with that era of engine and GTS bits and pieces and the sound that those GTSs make. I think if you drove them back to back, I think you can be a lot more excited in the 981 than you would a 997S. So I think if you haven't got practical concerns and from a driving point of view, I think you'd be in the 981 GTS all day long.
I'd go 981 GTS, I think. Yeah, the GTS stuff excites me over the S. Definitely.
Get me coat then, I think. Get me coat.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd tell you what, just to add to that, only because I recently had a little look, 981 GTSs are holding their money ridiculously well as well.
Are they?
Like, a 997S, you can be into 20 something K now, can't you, for a 997S?
That's for a Gen 1 though. This has got to be a Gen 2, I would say, to make that fair. So it's probably,
all right, fair enough.
Yeah, probably around the 40, 45K mark, I would say.
Yeah. So that's if you look at 981 GTSs, they've been that price for the last 2/3 years.
Yeah, agreed.
They've literally held the money. As obviously Carreras, there's that many more of them. They're on that sliding scale, definitely.
Next question, Neil Plumpton. I think this is a bit, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word.
Careful.
But basically, our friend Neil, who listens to the pod, he has a 991 GT3 and he has taken the stock wing off and replaced it with a ducktail. So perhaps not so cryptically, Neil asks us, would you take a stock wing off a GT3 and replace with a ducktail?
Yeah, I'll just I'll play his little message.
Hi, Andy, Joe and Lee. It's Neil Plumpton. My question is, would you take a stock wing off a GT3 and replace with a ducktail? Thanks, guys.
What's your answers then? I'm a yes. Take all that. I don't like all the big wings on the back. I'm not a wing and ting man. Much prefer a little ducktail.
The wing and ting. Well, I mean, look, there is a touring out there, isn't there, which feeds directly into this exact same mantra, and it's from the factory. The R plays into it as well. It gives you everything in terms of a GT car, but it's a little bit less look at me, isn't it? I think on paper it's really, really cool. Obviously, the Gen 1 is PDK only, so it's not exactly the same as a touring, is it? I just think, and I have to be careful, I suppose. When you start messing around with a car like that, that's had like literally millions of pounds invested in it in terms of R&D, you have to be completely sure in what you're doing. The execution has to be there. I know with Neil's particular car, it seems to be, because all the right things have been done. As the diffuser from the 911R has been put in as well, isn't it? So you have to manage about airflow, because they are all there ultimately for a reason to begin with. Mm-hmm. So have a clear, so probably, Andy, feed in same into what you were saying in regards to restoration. It's just to have a clear idea from the start. Don't just take the wing off because it might look better, but look at the science behind it as well.
Can I ask a question, Lee? Educate me on what the difference is between a GT3 and a touring, other than wings and tings.
It's one of those things where on paper they don't look too dissimilar, but actually with Porsche, it's the sum of its parts. All the small things add up. So little things, again, like the damper settings are totally different on a GT3 to touring to a normal car, for example. Again, because you've got a car that is built for a track versus a car that's a little bit more road biased. Again, Porsche, they're not just going to take the wing off, or as a company is not just going to take a wing off and sell it because people don't like the wing. So that's an example. I mean, for example, as well, I've been told by somebody at Porsche that the wiring loom on a GT3 touring is completely different to a touring with a wing. Okay.
So it's quite a bit more different than just the looks.
It's not just, one's got a fixed wing, one has an active wing. They've looked at airflow. So the on the touring, for example, it uses the Cabriolet's active rear wing. So it comes up a lot higher than it does on the coupe. Obviously with the gurney flap as well, it's got a slightly different diffuser at the back of the car, and then the bits and pieces, like I said, small but very crucial chassis tweaks.
What do you think, Joe?
To be honest, I'm a big fan of the look. I think it's cool. I think I'd probably certainly have a go at doing the same myself. I think it was exactly what you said already, but I wouldn't underestimate how much downforce you get from a wing. I think this, having played around with our track Cayman and things and talking to lots of different people about bolting wings on, for track use specifically. And it's, you'd be amazed how much difference you get from a wing. So I think as long as you're mindful of that, and depending on what you're doing with the car, if it's more for looks and aesthetics rather than, all and out speed or performance or track days or whatever else you bought the car for, then I think fine. I think if you were looking to track your GT3, then taking the wing off and a ducktail on probably isn't the most sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
What about you, Andy? You're in agreement with that, are you, or are you going to be controversial?
No, I think take it off. Yeah. I'm down with what Neil's done to his car.
Yeah,
I'm down.
You don't like grip anyway. You like bold tires, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I actually had a bit of a revelation the other day because I took my car out. I actually got it out the garage and I drove down the road. It was actually wet, and it stuck. It was gripping the road. I just wasn't used to it.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like it. Much prefer a bit more movement. Right then, next question. Who's going to fire the next one?
I tell you, that's not a bad one. Have your sports car requirements changed as you got older? Sorry. Yeah. Do you value different things now versus when younger? That's by Toby. He's one of our patrons, I believe.
Yeah.
That's a decent question. I don't know about you, gents, but I would say that's definitely the case with me, as highlighted by the fact that my first car, the Volkswagen Polo, was just on the floor, and I took pride in replacing the front splitter every other week and all that sort of get up. Stretched tires as well. The arches used to bounce off the tires, and it's nuts, absolute nutter when I look back on it. But now I really value comfort, and I just think, if you give me that car, I wouldn't take it back for free. I would just be absolutely bone crunching, And I think as cool as it is saving within like Porsche circles, I just think how great it is to drive around as a Gen 1 991 RS as a daily. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm all about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
quite
you do get
quite
a bit
like
softer,
comfort,
don't you?
Yeah, you do. Well,
older.
Andy, you've definitely got the most experience in that regard. So what are you saying, sir?
Cheeky bugger.
You've probably got 20 years on us, I think, haven't you?
Easy.
Yeah. What's it like, Andy? What's it like?
It's like being that old, Andy. Come on, tell us.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel the need to run out and get more power like it always used to be when you were younger. It is how much power can you get? What modifications can you get? Can you do for more power? I just don't feel the need for that anymore. What I've got is plenty. Same with suspension mods, really. As you say, it needs to drive right and be comfortable.
Do you taste mature as you get older? And I think, you'll do it. Everyone does a bit of growing up, don't they? And I think, that goes with everything, whether it's, out every Friday night, or
do they, Joe? To taste mature when they get older? Haven't you got airbags on your 964?
And a banging sound system.
Yeah. Going through the drive-through. Oh, let me just pump the car up so I can reach that coffee cup. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
And he bounces down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just trying to recapture a bit of my youth. That's all. I'll shut up now. I'll just go back in my box.
No, you're making a really good point about your taste maturing as you got older, Joe.
Yeah, apparently.
Low riding. He likes it.
It is funny though, isn't it? Because you grow up and you just, wings on cars are cool, and really wings on cars will always be cool, won't they? Come on. I'm sure there are people that buy RSs alone just for like the mad stance on the car. It's as simple as that. They might not know anything about it.
Yeah, I'm not capable of driving it, but
There are people that kind of really immerse themselves in the finer details of these things, particularly when a new car comes out. It's very eminent in Porsche circles, isn't it? All these finer details, but I'm sure there are people that just go out and they'll just say, I love the wing, or I love lizard green. I've got to buy it. I love lizard green. What a colour! Yeah,
it's good enough excuse as any, though, isn't it? I think if you buy it and drive it to the shops and back, and fine, and if you're doing whatever else you can do with it, then that's fine too, isn't it?
Exactly. That all comes down to what you want to get out of the car, isn't it? So, good question, that Toby.
I'm never going to stop modifying cars. I know that. Everything's modified. Can't help myself. Right then, next question. Go on, Lee. You pick one.
Okay, yes, we've got a pretty decent one here from No Name, but it is a speak pipe, so we'll put the sound clip on shortly. I think the written version of it is it'd be great to hear what the options are when rebuilding these engines and hearing what characteristics change.
That's Stephen Toso from Australia.
Stephen Toso. Okay. I'm trying to give a bit of context here. It says, I'm in Australia and had a brilliant SC. Now I have a 3.3 930 turbo. I'd love to hear what's involved and what would be possible with engines like the SC 3.2. So that's the upgrade from 3 litre to 3.2, 930, 3.3 and 964. It'd be interesting to hear experts' recommendations.
Hi, Andy, Lee and Joe. My question is in relation to rebuilding air-cooled engines and upgrading displacement at the time of a rebuild. For a 3-litre SC engine, maybe boring the compression out to 3.1, 3.2, 3.4. If you've got a 3.2, maybe to a 3.4, 3.5. It'd be really interesting to get someone in who does this as a profession and knows what's involved and what the rewards are for torque, for horsepower, usable power, as well, gearing ratios and so forth. It'd be really fascinating to hear someone's take on what to do when the engine comes out, and pricing on ballpark figures, of course, on what's involved in any extra components that should be considered at the time, and pretty much what kind of characteristics the car inherits or loses as well. It'd be a really fascinating conversation for those out there with early air-cooled stuff like SCs, 3.2s. It would also be interesting to hear their thoughts on upgrading anything like a 930 V30 turbo with a 3.3 intercooled engine, and what are some really cool mods to gain some download torque and, just see what makes that engine a bit more usable.
Well, sir, if it's expert recommendations you want, you have absolutely come to the wrong place. But what we have done, because we've actually seen this question before, haven't we? And we just felt as a trio we weren't overly qualified to answer that with any kind of real due diligence behind the question. So what we have done is we've put the question to our friend Chris Wright at Right Tune, a Porsche specialist based in Oxfordshire, and he's given us the following answer.
Hi there, and thanks very much for the question. So if you want to do sort of a 3 litre to 3.2 upgrade, what we do is we change the barrels and pistons, or we get the barrels you've got and machine them out from 95 to 98 mil and get them re-nickel-sealed, and that gives you the extra displacement. Now, using the 911 SC engine, you can use the standard inlet system. We modified the metering head and warm-up regulator. Can change the cams. Don't want to go too radical on them. You can, and you'll get more power, and you'll win all the willy waving competitions in the pubs. But it goes down to whether it's drivable or max power. Plus, often that power's at the top end with a 3 litre, originating 3 litre engine, and it's, unless you're driving on the circuit, if it's on the road, it's going to be unlikely you can drive the car in a manner to get it to work like that. And often it gives lumpy idle and all that kind of thing. But it's really about what you're after. But for example, we've built one recently, 3 litre, started off as a 3 litre SC, used Marla barrels, 98 mil Marla barrels, Carrillo pistons, Doherty cams, modified the fuel system. We changed, it was an US spec engine. We used the Euro spec inlets because they're bigger, and other bits on there as well, and it made good power. So I think that particular engine started off as a 180, and we had it on the dyno, and it ended up with 230, and the torque, that's 230 horsepower, and the torque went from like a 175 to 225 foot-pounds. So it's quite a good gain. With regards to cost doing something like that, it's, standard rebuild cost, whatever your engine builder is going to charge you on time, really standard parts, and then it's just the barrels and pistons, which you could look, and there's various different ones. We've personally used JE and Carrillo pistons and had no issues, and we've also either bought new barrels or had them bored out and re-nickel, as I said before, and had no problems as well. But I have heard of people having problems, so be careful what company you use with things like the liner coming off. Now, if you want to go more radical, then you can go things, obviously like throttle bodies, and you could be looking at, sort of 310 horsepower, 300, around the 300 mark. But you've got to go get some management on there, and you're looking at sort of 10 grand upwards for that. And then going backwards to previous costs, barrels and pistons. The pistons that we get are about 1,600 quid. The machining cost for barrels is about £1,000. So, over your standard rebuild costs about 2.5. If you want to go throttle bodies, add another 10. I advise, a better exhaust system. Again, SSI or better. It's going to, everything you can do to aid this, the better, but obviously cost is always, a potential, it depends what your goal is and what your budget is. I've seen bills between £10,000 and £100,000 for doing mad engine builds. 3 litre SC and 3.2 Carrera engines have the same diameter bore. So if you put this 98mm barrel and piston, it does the same upgrade. So your 3 litre becomes a 3.2, 3.2 becomes a 3.4. Now, regard your 3.3 turbo question, to get it to have more low down torque and be more usable, you can fix that with about £60,000. It's 1970s technology, so you need to do an awful lot of work to make it better. I mean, I could say simply, it's not that simple, but twin plug it will give you better throttle response. This was something that was my father Tony did a lot when he used to work at G-Force Motorsport, and they had a lot of turbo race cars, and the drivers really commented that it really improved the throttle response with the twin plug. Nowadays with modern turbo technology and all that kind of stuff, you can get more horsepower and more usable, but you've got to do an awful lot of work to the inlet, fuel, engine management, and all that kind of stuff. Also, I would advise, if you're modifying the engine, it sort of goes without saying, but I really would recommend dyno work. If you're doing something that is not designed as the factory, I would strongly recommend doing that, because although it may seem an expense that could be spared, it's going to be an awful lot cheaper than melting a piston or something like that. So yeah, anyway, thanks guys, hope that helped. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks to Chris from Right Tune for the answer there. Okay, another question. Have you watched the Car Guys TV latest video? Well, it's not their latest video. It'll be a few weeks old now, on Porsche dealerships. And what do you think? So basically, Car Guys TV was going on about allocations and relationships with dealers. Have you both seen it?
Yeah, I have. I think Damien makes some good points. I know Damien a little bit. He used to own T911 Mag back in the day. Some points I think are well made on there. I think the issue isn't so much, because people talk about the brand, don't they? It's difficult to blame Porsche as a brand. I mean, yes, they could possibly have a little bit more kind of sway over it, but all of these dealerships are not actually owned by Porsche, are they? It's the franchise, and it really is on. So those outside of that main network, the franchises, it's the bottom line is money, and it really is. That's all it comes down to, isn't it? And I think they know with Porsche, it's a premium product, isn't it? Hate the word, but it's a premium product. Look, if they annoy one or two people, well, they still know they're going to sell the cars ultimately. And I think that's kind of where the issue is. It's almost like there's a lack of ownership in how that brand or how that name is being treated. And ultimately the customer definitely does lose out. Definitely.
I think Porsche should take a bit more responsibility for it. Actually, I think, yes, they create a great product. But I think they think I don't know. It's got to be intentional. Sorry. It's a massive conglomerate brand, isn't it? Yeah. I think they know exactly what they're doing in terms of creating demand. I think it just leaves the system, leaves it open to, abuse, doesn't it? And that's kind of the long and the short of it. With there's money to be made, unfortunately, people always take advantage of that. And I think it's pretty sad when you see, cars going to people that are just flipping them, and, people not getting cars they want, and these cars not being driven. So I still think there's much fairer systems and ways that they could implement to kind of manage it.
What sort of system do you think then, Jay? I'd be interested to know there, really.
I think there's a few ways they could do it. I think probably get shot down quite quickly, but I think if you essentially rented or leased your GT car, I think that would get rid of the whole flipper market. You had it for a period of time. It costs you X amount. You know what the depreciation is. You know what your costs are. If you want to own and drive that car, you would go through that process. If you're not interested in driving it, then why would you? So I think something like that could easily work. With a sell off at the end, or however it works. I think there's something along those lines that could actually benefit lots of different people. Likewise timing it. If you had an allocation of whether it's 6 months or a year or whatever with a car, and then it went back into a circulation, you could essentially build a almost not a club as such, but you could build a following of GT cars of people that want to experience them, drive them, albeit it would have to be people that weren't massively hung up on long-term ownership. Yeah. But these days, I just don't think that exists particularly. And there's not many people out there that are buying GT cars to keep them forever. Yeah, you've only got to look at the amount of GT cars that have got multiple owners with hundreds of miles, not even 1,000 miles on them. Yeah, I think So I think that's one option. The other one is you just police it heavily. Yeah, I think at the moment it's, like I said, it's down to individual dealerships to kind of manage their allocations and who gets what. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, there's all the brand envelope stuff going on. It goes to people's mates. It's a friend of a friend. It's everybody knows someone with a story, and I think if it was controlled top down, you get away from all that.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, there are problems. There are conceptually good solutions, but it's just difficult. Like I feel like I know there's a problem, but I don't know the answer to it, and I feel like that's probably the issue. Is maybe people don't want to know the answer ultimately. Talking about boardroom level, but
I think to be fair to Porsche HQ, I did have a really, really nice story. It's going back a few years. It probably would have been was it beginning of Gen 2 GT3s, 991s? We were up at a Cars and Coffee thing at Portsmouth, and I got chatting to a chap there who had a new one recently taken delivery, and after talking a bit longer, he actually also had a 997 Gen 1 GT3, and he actually got a phone call from HQ completely out of the blue. He said he bought his 997 GT3 as a track car, kept it, however many, whatever it was, 6-7 years throughout, and used it, had 30,000-40,000 miles on it. He got a call completely out of the blue from Porsche HQ to say, we can see you bought this GT car and you still got it. Would you be interested in a new GT3? And that was when allocations were just non-existent. I thought, actually, what a brilliant way of doing it. I mean, somebody somewhere has gone, okay, we've got an extra slot, an allocation or whatever. Let's make sure this goes to someone who actually really wants it. And they've reached out to exactly the sort of person that should own one of those cars. So I think somebody somewhere has obviously got some intention, but they just haven't rolled it out to any sort of degree that is making it through to all the centres around the country, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that is awesome. It's almost like from the dealership's point of view, the wrong decision, dare I say it, because with a car like that person is obviously likely to use that car for, say, 10 years, like they have his 997 GT3 before, or her GT3, whoever it was. Whereas these cars that kind of get flipped, well, the dealership knows it's going to be coming back into them because there's more than likely
another bite of the cherry, anyway. Can't they?
Exactly that. And this is what I mean, where it all comes down to numbers. So, if there's people kind of sitting on forums and, moaning on podcasts about it, well, it's kind of immaterial because to them, as I say, it all comes down to numbers and that bottom line, and they're selling cars, and it's, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I think that's kind of how it is. I
think the bit that gets me is there is a known sort of formula for if you really want to get a GT car, and that is you have to buy multiple other non-GT product that the centre doesn't particularly want, and quite often I think the customer doesn't particularly want. I mean, there were stories of people buying diesel Cayennes when they were particularly out of favour not that long ago, and losing substantial amounts of money on a sort of backroom handshake that they'll get a GT slot. And some of those still didn't get their slots even after they sort of played the game of buying the cars they don't really want and all that sort of business. And it's almost a numbers thing. You have to buy X amount of cars you don't want to then maybe get one you do. And I just think that's a slippery slope because when the wind turns with the economy and everything else, then I think dealerships might suddenly have to work a bit harder for their money, and I think those people that were given the flipper cars, well, where are they going to be? They're not going to be there buying Porsches still, as the enthusiasts still will.
Yeah, good to see you pumped up there, Joe. Loving it.
Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry.
What do you think, Andy?
Well, what do I think? I think there's only two ways you're going to get that sort of car, and that's either spend the money, or you've got, somebody, somebody. That's the only way you're going to do it. And that's the way of the world in pretty much everything. I think as far as Damien's little video, when I was watching it, I was just like, get over yourself, mate. I really did. I just think they're not, a dealership's not going to pander to you. And maybe they just don't like you, but yeah, get over yourself.
I think you do have to remember, because that type of video, it's not the first and it definitely won't be the last. But I mean, it's a first world problem, isn't it? You know, and I think, you know, to not be given a 911, it's possibly not the worst day you're ever going to have. Yeah. You know, but hey, you know, it's obviously it's done well with a nice bit of clickbait, isn't it? So
maybe it's earned him enough money to afford the overs on a.
Yeah.
Well, we've had that conversation before, haven't we? And I think if you want a cheap brand new GT car, just go and pay the overs. Yeah. Whether it's 10 grand, 15 grand, you'd lose far more playing the game, buying stuff you don't want. Just go and pay the overs and get the car you want.
Yeah, and you get the car straight away. I think, you know, ultimately, if you can afford a new GT3, well, you can probably afford an extra X% to get one now, and like you say, not have to buy, you know, some like goppingly coloured Cayenne and have to put that in your garage for 6 months or something. So, you know, because it's like you say, I think in the long run, you're spending just as much, if not less, actually, and you're not playing the game and pretending you're good at golf just to have the day out with the dealership. So, you know,
very true.
Very good.
I'm bored of that question. Come on, let's move on.
More air cooled, please.
Yeah. Have we got any air cooled questions?
I've got a question for you, Andy.
Yeah,
I have. Yeah, no, you should be. Especially with that tash on your background.
Oh, it's still there, isn't it?
Oh, there's the filter, yeah. No, my question is, obviously, as a 993 Carrera owner, you're looking at a 964 beforehand. Can you ever see a scenario where you will drive a water-cooled Porsche?
Yes.
Really? So that genuinely surprises me.
Really? Yeah, I'm not against it. If I can only have one Porsche, then it'll be an air-cooled Porsche.
Yeah.
I can see a Macan as coming into the family.
No, but just so sports car.
But I can see
it. Yeah.
If I was able to in the future, I would definitely consider a water-cooled. Yeah.
Which one would it be? That's you've obviously thought about that.
It would probably be a touring or an R if I could, but I don't think I'll ever be able to. But yeah, it'd have to be something nice. Okay, got another next question. What do you guys think of the 911 Turbo? It used to sit at the top of the Porsche tree, but isn't it a bit of the? Oh God, I can't speak tonight, can I? Isn't it a bit of a dinosaur these days? From Justin Sider.
He's got it.
Right then. What do we think?
Oh dear, cracking. I'm going to jump in if that's all right. I think that is a really good question, because I used to think, actually, do you know what? The Turbo is a dinosaur now. It's squeezed at both ends of the Porsche stratosphere, one from beneath with the Carreras, which are turbocharged now anyway. And then at the top end, you've got the electrification of Taycans, etc., bearing down. So actually, in the middle of all that, you've got this gas guzzling, poor MPG, high horsepower turbo that just might be a little bit out of date and a bit out of sync with kind of where Porsche is going. But I have to say, drove a 997 Turbo recently, and it completely changed my mind, because whereas Turbo used to sit at the top of the tree, as Justin said, it might not offer the same thrill as we like getting from GT cars these days, but its star definitely hasn't fallen. I think it's always, as well as being a really, really fast 911 and the ultimate dual 911, it's a bit of a technological tour de force, isn't it, as well? So it never really feels old. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, even
I'm with you.
Even if you drive, say, a 993 Turbo today, so 408 horsepower they are. By modern standards.
I'm not sure if it's age related. I think it's that specialness that you can't kind of put your finger on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what I mean. But I think it's just, especially with the older stuff, everything's just a step on in terms of how lavish the car is, how lavishly appointed it is inside in terms of instruments and spec, etc. But yeah, even with the new stuff, I mean, obviously, like the Carreras are turbocharged and you can get big power out of them. I think Litchfield are doing things with the Carrera T, for example, which is the base Carrera engine. But yeah, no, nothing quite beats the thump in the back from a turbo, does it? You know, and it does. Yeah, it feels special. It always feels special to me.
I think it's a party trick that never gets old. Like I think, it was, when would the 997 Turbo S, when would that have been released? What sort of year is that? 2008?
Between 2010 and 12 they were.
Oh, 10 and 12, sorry. Okay. So somewhere in the amongst of that, I had one for an afternoon, and it was just, it was mind blowing. And I think that was, and that kind of really opened my eyes. So, okay, there's a bit more to a turbo than just, it just being, it's more than just a badge, isn't it? You know, there's so much more to the package of a turbo. And I think actually, like you said, and it's good to hear that the latest ones are still sort of punching that on as well. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest with you, like a turbo, it's not a point and squirt car. You know, there's a lot more to it, especially in terms of its chassis and how dynamic it is. And somebody once told me, which I think is worth relaying to listeners here, is that a turbo, really, if you're buying a turbo, you're buying two cars, because you've got a car that has the docility of a base Carrera around town, perfectly comfortable, etc., etc. But then turn the wick up to 11 and you've got a high performance super sports car, and it hits a level of performance that actually a Carrera can't hit, you know?
Good point.
So it's actually quite a shrewd buy to my mind. I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
I think all of the older turbos have kind of matured in age, in that because they've got a bit of turbo lag and all that sort of stuff. You've got that excitement with them. And as you said about, the quality of all the materials and stuff like that used in those older turbos really sort of lifts them above the other cars. I think a question is, are you a normally aspirated guy or a turbo guy? Is a question that's always rises to the top. And I like both. I like experiencing both sides of that. I love a normally aspirated car for the noises that it makes, the effort, but I also enjoy a turbo car for when you do get that boost.
Yeah.
And gives you that little rush. So I see the place for both of them. Do I like the new turbo? Maybe I might do in a few years' time once it's matured. I'm not overly fussed right now.
Okay, yeah. It's a little bit controversial, but I'd like to share a little bit of confession with you boys, relating to the 964 Turbo 3.6.
Yeah,
actually, one of the most disappointing driving experiences I've ever had in a 911, certainly.
Really?
I think I'd possibly overhyped it in my head. It's the bad boys car, isn't it, for a start? So it's a real poster car for a lot of people of a certain generation. But also the car at the time, I mean, they're still big money, but they've come back a bit. But at the time it was north of 200k. And that's a lot of money for a car. And I drove it, and I didn't feel the performance was as properly gut busting as I expected. And obviously it's the last rear wheel drive turbo, wasn't it, before the 993 came along.
Is that something to do with the era though? Because the 964 RS is a bit sort of lackluster compared to a normal RS as well though, isn't it?
I mean, again, I have an opinion of a 964 RS. They are phenomenal cars. Do not get me wrong. They are absolutely phenomenal cars. But in the realms of Rennsports, it's a fact that you could buy a 964 C2, and for less than half the money in terms of outlay of an RS, you can build a car that's probably better than an RS.
Yeah.
Which is a slightly different thing. I mean, really, the 964 era is revered, isn't it, for everything it gives us, rather than, well, actually, because of what it doesn't, you could argue. But yeah, the 964 turbo, it felt very safe to drive as well. It didn't feel like that kind of scary Widowmaker. I thought I'd throw that in there. It's a real kind of poster car for people. But yeah, I was really, really disappointed actually. However, I'd love a second bite of the apple if anybody's got one. So
maybe it was a bad one.
Well,
proving wrong.
to all intents and purposes, it was mint. It was low miles, beautiful color, midnight blue. You know, I mean, it was, you
Color makes it go faster, you know.
But it's just like in terms of, it wasn't a shed of a car. It had been really, really kind of looked after in its life. You could tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the reality didn't quite live up to the dream, really.
Right then, should we talk GT3?
Yeah. Okay. So there was, as I said at the top of the chat, we had, I think, maybe a dozen journalists. There's more in the virtual world now because Porsche doesn't have to worry about how many journalists it flies out to motor shows. So we get better access, arguably, in this virtual world that we're living in currently. But anyway, there was, probably a dozen or so journalists sitting on this round table with Andreas Preuninger, obviously head of the GT line at Porsche, and then also Dr. Frank-Steffen Walliser, who is head of the 911 line, as I said earlier on. And there were a couple of standout questions over and above what we've already come to know of the GT3, and I thought it'd be worth sharing with you two and obviously people at home as well. An interesting one, I think, was on what it's taken to make this car, really. And Dr. Walliser was really kind of keen to get across that this GT3 has had the biggest investment, and the project to complete it was by far the most complicated of any GT3 previously. Yeah. Mainly just to fulfill the regulations which are growing so fast, particularly in Europe. It sounded like they were talking this up to be the last GT3. It's clearly not, and they say that the story will go on. And I say that as in traditional of how we know it, of being naturally aspirated, high revving, emotional engines. But yeah, so I think this car really is a moral victory, I think, for those guys more than anything. You could just, the way they were talking about it, it kind of means a lot that despite everything that's going on at the moment, this car can still be produced and come out, Yeah, exactly that. Mr. Preuninger told us, of course, that touring this year, he says something that's really interesting. So the front of the GT3, as you know, is now double wishbone, which is a first for Porsche and the 911, but it's a race car setup, isn't it? And the touring is road, or more road biased than the winged car that we were talking about earlier on in the program. However, and I thought this was really interesting just in terms of the tech behind the 992 generation generally. That new front end is a lot stiffer, but it's also more stable due to those wishbones, according to Mr. Preuninger. So it's a natural evolution over the 991.2 in every way. There's no nicking or diving. It makes the front end very precise. The new front end system means we could gain some residual comfort for street use, which again, really interesting from a car with essentially a race car setup. He says that it's suitable, the touring, which obviously, as I said, later this year, is suitable, just as suitable for B roads as it is the track. It really is going to be a jack of all trades GT3. Again, I just think that's a bit of a win. However, this is the most interesting bit that I took away from the whole meeting, and it was Dr. Frank-Steffen Walliser was replying to, I think it was Stuart Gallagher, editor of Evo magazine these days, formerly GT Porsche, of course. He asked Dr. Walliser if Porsche is still on track with its program to roll out synthetic fuels by 2022. Now, I thought this was really what is it? It's not far off at all, but it's a really well-timed question because this was in the same week that Jaguar announced it's going to stop making vehicles with internal combustion engine, which is very sad, to be honest. I just feel like they're giving the fight up too early, but that's just my 10 pence. But then also Ford have been having similar murmurings, haven't they? Yeah. So amongst that kind of backdrop where you might be feeling pressure from the rest of the industry, Dr. Walliser's reply was this: we are still on track, very much so. It will begin with a very, very small volume. The synthetic fuels will start being used in race cars first, then they will filter through to cars being used at experience centres. And then lastly, it will go into road cars, starting with the GT cars. And this will be as the rollout of synthetic fuels in terms of its mass production increases. Yeah, that's the order it will go. But yeah, as you said, 2022, not far away at all. But Porsche still very much on track. He also said this, so it's really interesting. Synthetic fuels has only 8 to 10 components. A normal fuel has 30 to 40. Not all of it welcome. So in producing synthetic fuels, this means better emissions as well as better performance for the car, because you're not putting things into it which is not welcome, and a reduction of 85% in CO2. 85%. He did qualify that by saying that includes the whole process, including the supply chain, and not just obviously like the fuel that goes into the car itself. But I mean, those stats are good, aren't they? So as of next year, we are being given a fuel that has 85% less CO2. Andreas Preuninger followed it up by saying what they've also found is that this fuel in its current state of development is usable for 20 to 30-year-old cars without harming the engine at all. So this isn't just going to be something that is just going to be reserved almost exclusively for the newer stuff. It means that if you are buying excuse me, a 997, a 991, a 996, a 986, etc. There is absolutely a way forward for you and your sports car, and you've been able to enjoy a car with a naturally aspirated engine. And I think it therefore makes Jaguar's announcement even
premature,
more,
surely.
But definitely premature, but very disappointing. Very disappointing for the enthusiast, because ultimately a Jag is an enthusiast brand, isn't it? You know,
it's now just a Jag.
Yes, yeah. It has, unfortunately. Yeah, you know, the suits have won there, haven't they, over the enthusiast, and that company at its core is a sports car enthusiast company, and it's not the case anymore. But against all of that, Porsche is still ploughing clearly, you know, considerable investment into these synthetic fuels that ultimately means us three and everybody else listening at home can continue to enjoy our cars in a traditional way, responsibly. Massive, absolutely massive.
Is it a Porsche only thing? As in, are they the only company that's involved in it?
No, there's several. In terms of manufacturer, Porsche is absolutely leading the way on this, but there are other people involved on the periphery. I don't know who. I can't actually remember. I might have to find out.
Is the idea that this stuff will end up on the pumps? Is that what they're thinking, like going forwards, or is it going to be something you have to sort of go and hunt out?
To all intents and purposes, absolutely, Joe, it should be on the pumps. I will try and find the figures that they are quoting, because obviously, comparatively speaking, the numbers are going to be pretty small to start with, but the numbers that have been touted is massive.
How about the cost of fuel?
Good question. But then did you see this week, again, just to counter that I think it was Autocar did a test or an investigation, and actually running an electric car in certain areas of the country is more expensive than running a car with an internal combustion engine.
Didn't see that, but yeah, interesting. There's so many variables with that. It's a really tough thing to test or prove, I think. But yeah, I understand the sentiment.
Right. Okay. So what I've found so far, Porsche expects to have 130,000 litres ready by 2022.
130,000 litres?
Yeah. Which again will be mainly reserved for its race cars. And actually Porsche
doesn't sound very much, but yeah.
No, it doesn't. Porsche did say that the new 992 GT3 Cup car, so the race version of the road car that's just been announced, that is completely been built with synthetic fuels in mind. So whatever is currently being developed in terms of these e-fuels, I mean, it will start with those cars in the Super Cup and obviously the National Carrera Cup programs as well.
Have you seen the pictures of that car?
Of what, sorry?
The GT3 Cup car.
Yeah, I mean, it came out just before Christmas, and it's always it's usually it's pretty nice for, you know, if you know what you're looking for. The GT3 Cup, it always gives you a sure footing as to how the GT3 road car is going to look, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was at the end of last year. Pretty cool. What do you think of it anyway, Andy?
I saw a load of pictures where it was at DRT, which is the Destrefan over in Miami.
Yes.
And I think they had quite a few of them there. And they look pretty epic, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks amazing. Yeah. What an eyeful.
What a quality finish as well for a race car. It's and you look at panel gaps and things like that, it's like just another level, isn't it, of race car?
Look at the, I think if you, last year we saw the 991 Cup cars and the new GT4 Cup cars, and when you see them up close, the fit and finish out the factory is phenomenal. I mean, it's you could wheel it into a showroom. It was amazingly well finished for what is a track car.
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah, big time.
Just to roll back to your electric argument briefly, just a little comedy thing that came up in conversation. So some people know, I'm away at the moment, end up staying away a little bit longer due to circumstances, and we've got some friends here with us, and they own a Tesla, and because they also end up staying away from their parked Tesla for a little bit longer than expected, the battery's actually now gone to flat. Sent them a message saying it's flat. And they've got no way of moving their Tesla, so they are now lumbered with a Tesla stuck in a car park somewhere. And Tesla told them to call their insurance company. That was their answer.
Really? No way. I'll tell you what, it'd be good, Joe, as like roving reporter that you are, to keep us updated on this and give us an outcome next week, because I've always wanted to know what happens here. Like in a petrol car, when you play petrol light roulette, obviously you cannot do that with an electric car. So it'd be nice to know genuinely what happens here. It's really interesting how Tesla has washed their hands of that straight away. Definitely.
I mean, the plot thickened a little bit because they used one of these meet and greet parking services from the airport where they take it off. And anyway, long story short, their Tesla's actually parked. Meet and dent. Well, meet and dent, yeah. But anyway, their Tesla's actually parked in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere. So it's not even anywhere near a charging point. Because this is the other thing, is we'll just surely plug the thing, even if it's a 3-point plug, get an extension lead to it, get it plugged in, get to a charging point. No, middle of nowhere in a field, completely dead Tesla. So it's I'd be interested to see how it plays out, but it's just another one of those stupid little things. You can't jumpstart a Tesla, or not that I know of. When it's stuck, it's stuck. But I was really surprised. I thought Tesla would have a recovery van of some sort, but no, sort yourself out.
It sounds like it's going to be there forever then. So just to go back to the synthetic fuels, Joe, you wanted to know the numbers behind it.
Yes.
It was, so Porsche has pledged to produce 130,000 litres of climate neutral e-fuel by 2022. That's next year. Joe, you said that wasn't a lot, rightly so. Get this. The new venture aims to step up production to 55 million litres of e-fuel a year by 2024.
Wow. Okay.
And then 2 years later on, they would have times that by 10. So they'll be producing 550 million litres by 2026. I mean, that is 5 years away.
That's pretty impressive, albeit there's a longer timeline than we probably all hoped for.
Yeah, see, I find that, I find that quite interesting. I was really buoyed by that. I was like, this is absolutely going to be the saviour of cars. And you're saying, well, why haven't we got it now?
Well, no, I think it's great, but it's like, obviously electric cars are taking over the world. So I think if they don't get the finger out and get the synthetic fuels out there, then like you said, Jag's already done it. Is it Volvo has already done it? If all the different companies stop producing combustion engines, well, then there'll be no real need for synthetic fuel, because it will literally be a dying product for car, whatever cars are left.
Yeah.
So just to put it in context, I just had a quick Google. So the UK, according to Google, this is, so I wouldn't quite call it fact checked, a year, 16.2 billion litres of retail petrol and 20.8 billion litres of diesel. So we've got quite a way to go to make up that. But I suppose, you could look at the other way. If we're using that much fuel at the moment, that's how many cars there are that it could be servicing going forward.
Yeah, and that is obviously, that's the mass market from that figure. Whereas this, we're just talking Porsche for now until it shares its technology with other people, in which case production will increase exponentially, won't it, I suppose? So,
but we need it on a local pump to make it viable for the world, don't we?
Yeah.
For the masses.
Yeah.
That's good news, though. I think if it's in progress.
I've just realised an advantage that I have over the two of you. I've got less years until I stop driving. Take that, young boys. Take that. I don't have to worry.
I laughed, then I felt a little bit sorry for you.
It is a good point, though, isn't it? And Are we in the golden era of the motor vehicle now, or actually have we passed it? I would argue that we're a few years past it now, personally, because this digital creep that keeps going on with these cars, and it's the cars are being taken away from us more and more in terms of actually operating them, isn't it?
Well, I think the golden years, we know where the golden years were. They was the 1990s and the 2000s, weren't they?
Are you still speaking with reference to the automobile there, or are you talking
my
about
golden years as well? Yeah.
That's your experience down the discotheque.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say but surely this is one of those conversations that everybody has, when they look back 20 years. In 20 years' time, we'll be sat there going, do you remember 2020 and all the cars rolling around then and how that was the best time for motoring? Da, da, da. Yeah, if you went back to year 2000, I bet everyone said, oh yeah, do you remember the 80s when you could work on cars and all the rest of it? There's always everyone always looks back through rose tinted glasses, don't they? They don't sit there going, well, actually, cars in the 80s are a bit shit. It's I don't know. I think it's a moving target.
Well, again, it just appeals to your audience, doesn't it? Like people when they're older. So youngsters today, when they're older, are they really going to appreciate the magic of a pre-impact bumper 911S? Where it's going to be a bit lumpy while it's cold, and then you have to get the whole car warmed up before it starts work. You can work it properly. Is it a case of, well, actually I can just jump in a car, press a button, there's no mechanical part, so there's less to go wrong?
Yeah we'll find out, won't we?
We should probably get one more little thing in there so that we don't end it on such a sad note.
Got one last thing. Could we ask our listeners to do some reviews on Apple Podcasts, any other podcast applications that you use? Get some nice reviews on there for us so we can stay number one everywhere.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
But we don't go on about it.
But we are the number one Porsche podcast, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. In 11 countries, was it?
Yeah, 11, yeah.
Okay, we'll take that.
Okay, right. See you next week then.
Nice one, chaps. Look after yourselves. You've been listening to Road to Redline, the number one Porsche and Car podcast, fueled by our generous Patreons. If you'd like to join in supporting the podcast, please see patreon.com/Road to Redline and find us on Instagram.